for clarity, there were a lot of things that law enforcement didn't tell anyone. Not just that the roommates weren't just roommates, that they survived through this massacre, that they saw, well, one of them saw the man, that they both apparently heard things, that they concreted what law enforcement believed to be a timeline for these murders. However, in addition to the eyewitnesses, on November 13th, law enforcement also found the sheath to a K-bar knife near the right leg of MadisonMogen, lying in her bed, partially covered by her comforter, somewhat tucked beneath her body. In addition to that, law enforcement had also found a latent shoe print. The shoe print seemingly resembled something similar to that of a Vans, with a diamond pattern on the sole. Law enforcement didn't mention any of those things. So coming out of this on the 13th, the roommates have similar stories. Nothing was weird until it got weird, but shit's always been weird. And now we're both wondering if all that weird shit just came to a head last night. That's their story, both of them. But there's a severe mismatch, and we will get to that eventually. Now, let's focus on the match. The survivors unanimously agreed, in some conversation that takes place after 4:25 a.m., but before their interviews with police on the 13th, that at some time, approximately 1 month prior, KayleeGoncalves had called. She was home alone. She went to let her dog out, and she thought that she saw a man watching her in the woods behind the house. So she called her roommates and said, "How long before you guys come home?" They were practically on their way home. And that's what they told her. And they asked why. And she said, "Because I think there is a man in the woods watching me. I saw like a silhouette, and he's just standing there." So there is a birthday party during the day that Kaylee throws for a friend. And during that birthday party, the dog is running off into the bushes, time and time again, and not returning when he's being called. It's unusual for him to run off and not return. Eventually, this leads them to just take the dog inside, close the door. They take the party in, and they go inside. Then, Kaylee is outside, taking the dog out, and she thinks she sees the silhouetted man in the woods. Following that, Kaylee returns home to find that the rear slider door is wide open and her golden doodle Murphy is missing. She has to go out and look for him. No one knows how the slider got open. On October 29th of 2022, which so happened to be Ethan's birthday, there was a Halloween party. Again, Murphy ran off into the woods many times and would not come back. This time, though, when he ran off into the woods, the group could hear a heavier embodiment moving in the woods, as if the dog was chasing something off or causing something to retreat. They didn't see anyone, but they went inside and closed the door, because this is becoming a habit with the dog. And then, of course, on the night of the murders, just about an hour and a half before everyone inside of the home who was slaughtered, MadisonMogen and Bethany Funk took Murphy out the kitchen slider into the backyard to pee. And it would seem that after Bethany left Maddie outside alone with the dog ran off into the woods. Because Maddie then comes to Bethany's room and says, "Do you know where the dog went?" To which Bethany says no and goes to bed. Now, Bethany never talks about this, but at 2:53 a.m., she received a phone call from MadisonMogen. It was the last phone call that Maddie Mogen ever made. And I believe that that is Maddie calling to let Bethany know that at 2:53 a.m., they had the dog back. They found the dog. The dog is back. And the very next day, on November 14th, they brought a canine scent dog to the crime scene. Before the media had really stormed the crime scene, and before many people would ever have a chance to know that it had happened. The canine followed the footprints that were found near the backslider door, followed the footprints seemingly to and fro, and seemingly lost the scent in the parking lot, indicating to the handler that the perpetrator left the home and got into a vehicle in the parking lot behind the home. There was no context as to why anyone was bringing up drugs. And at first I thought it had to have been something going on online with all the nonsense.
2 a.m. is a dark hour, I can tell you that. We're all. It's important for us. I mean, the reason we've agreed to do this is there's some misinformation out there. And that's been hard for us. And that's why we, as a family, talked about it and agreed to do this, because the things that are being said are 100% not true. There's not drugs involved. There's not some weird love triangle. Ethan stayed the night at his girlfriend's house, who was one of 5 girls who lived in the home. And it's just important that people let the criminal part of it try to work itself out, and that.
But the day before that interview, it had been stated in police record that there had been a $2 bill and suspected drugs found on the 2nd floor in the west bedroom, the bedroom of XanaKernodle. And many of the police records refer back to asking witnesses, did any of the housemates use drugs or sell drugs or store drugs? The next day is the presser. We've been watching. And between that day, November 16th, and November 17th, autopsies are conducted on the 4 victims. Coroner Kathy Mabbitt, not just the coroner, but a registered nurse and a defense attorney.
Kathy, with a C, Mabbitt, Mabbutt. I got the call just a few minutes after noon that there were 4 homicides, but I didn't go to the scene because of law enforcement doing their investigation first. So I didn't actually go to the scene until about 5 or 5:30.
So in your experience, what is it that you saw when you showed up?
Well, there was a lot of blood. It was a very sad scene with 4 murdered college students.
You're ruling all 4 deaths homicides?
Yes.
Okay. And can you give us a manner of death? Yeah.
I believe that the press release was that they were from a sharp object. So
stabbings.
Yeah, I will know more after the autopsies tomorrow.
And do you believe this could be like a murder-suicide or?
No, they're 4 homicides.
4 homicides. Okay.
Well, the toxicology reports, right, they usually take 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes longer. But they might, I don't think they're going to be relevant in the actual manner or cause of death.
Thank you. Do you know what the time frame for that would be?
It just depends on how relevant the toxicology report is, but
Oh, okay.
So-
Okay, so it was like the 4 to 6 weeks.
it could be.
Yeah.
And while most of the witnesses denied that Kaylee or Maddie, Dylan, or Bethany used drugs, there were many that openly admitted that Xana and possibly even EthanChapin were pretty into drugs.
There are likely some defensive wounds, but no, there just were a lot of stab wounds. And so, I mean, it was late at night or early in the morning. So it seems likely that maybe they were sleeping.
Can you tell me, when you say that they might have been sleeping, were they found in beds?
Yes.
Were they found in separate areas of the house?
That hasn't been disclosed yet.
And so, can you tell me if there were multiple stab wounds per victim, or were these sort of, individual lethal stab wounds that may have been less in number but more in lethality?
There were multiple stab wounds, yes, on them. So, and
Were there? Go ahead.
And most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound. Yes.
Can you describe what that one might have been?
But they were to the fatal ones were to the chest area or the upper body area.
Were there, Ms. Mabott, we showed a picture a moment ago of a wall on the outside of the house. It looked like the foundation on the outside of the house. I'm going to ask the control room to put that picture up again. This was fairly shocking to see. It's blood dripping on the outside of the house, almost as though it may be seeping from the inside. Does that sound congruent with the results of the crime scene that you were able to ascertain from your work?
From my observations, yes.
And can you tell me if that means that this might have been one of the bedrooms or where the beds were, that one of the victims was stabbed, this particular area of the house?
I think that's pretty likely, yes.
Is there anything that stood out in that volume of information that you received that might lead police to say it was a targeted attack? Because that's confounded a lot of us.
Right. Yes, I didn't share that same. I don't share that same opinion. Really, there's 4 people that have all been killed at one scene, and 4 young college students. So all of them were stabbed, and all of them were killed. So I'm not sure how that is targeted.
Came forth and said many things. Many people did not like the things that coroner Kathy Mabott had to say. In truth, Ms. Mabott was one of the only people who tried to tell you anything like what happened in the home. The majority of the victims were found in beds. The majority of the victims were likely asleep. She did not specify that one victim may not have been asleep because, A, she probably didn't know about Dylan's interview saying that someone was running up and down the stairs. And B, what she did know is that one of them was on the floor. On the floor does not mean that you were awake. So, likely an unintended fallacy that she told there. The coroner also stated that for the majority of the victims, there was one lethal stab wound that it was to the torso or the upper body. And Olivia Goncalves seems to agree that from what she's seen between her sister, Kaylee Goncalves, and her best friend, MadisonMogen, on the third floor, the majority of these injuries were almost experimental and post-mortem. And my favorite thing that the coroner says is, Ashley Banfield's like, so what are they saying about this being targeted and isolated, but that they can't say that the community is safe? Is that even possible? And coroner Kathy Mabbitt says, basically, I don't fucking share that sentiment. I don't even know what that is. That's dumb. However, the next day on November 18th, law enforcement finally see from their video surveillance of the neighborhood that there is this white car and that it arrives around 3:30 a.m. and circles the home several times. And it doesn't seem to leave until right after Dylan sees the man in the home. And everyone in the King Road residence is dead. On November 20th, the Goncalves family came out very boldly in a news interview that, for the most part, was missed by a lot of people. It was with Fox's Cross Country.
Our son went to that college. No, absolutely not.
My daughter was aware of her environment.
Very aware.
She turned her camera on. She would film when she thought somebody was following her out of a mall parking lot or a grocery store. She was very aware that, she was a pretty girl and that, it could attract some problems. So she was alert. She was a streetwise child.
She herself was a web sleuth, literally through and through. Listen to, which is just so ironic and just so surreal in all of it. Just very, sad for families when she'd hear about this type of stuff happening. Like, Mom, did you hear about that? Or Mom, did you hear about that?
Keep track of it.
And she was very well of her surroundings, very well. I mean, she would think somebody was following her, and she would call me and say, Mom, I think there's somebody following me. And I'm like, well, Kaylee, call the police, and then she'd say, oh, never mind. They just turned into 7-Eleven.
And they stated very sternly that their daughter, Kaylee Goncalves, was aware of her environment. Very aware that she was street smart, that she was a web sleuth herself, and that when she thought someone was following her, she would record. That this happened enough for her to reach out and call home when this happened and say, I think someone is following me. And her mom would say, Kaylee, call the cops. And she'd say, oh, never mind. I think they just turned into a 7-Eleven. Without anyone thinking that maybe they saw her on the phone and assumed she was calling the cops. A similar story would be repeated on November 23rd by the Goncalves family as well. And on that day, law enforcement would get a piece of information that they would hold on to with secrecy for a very long time. On November 23rd, they got Xana's phone records back. And they knew that she had been awake. She'd been on TikTok. She'd ordered DoorDash. And at 3:59 a.m., her DoorDash order was delivered. So when Dylan says that she heard someone in the kitchen at 4 a.m. listening to music and dancing, that makes sense. There'd be 7 bleak weeks. And for the most part, law enforcement would say the same things again and again and again. We need to know more about the night of Ethan and Xana. We keep hearing about this stalker that Kaylee Goncalves had. We can't confirm that. And X, Y, or Z individual has been cleared. All of the obvious suspects, back, to back, to back, to back, to back, were cleared by DNA and alibi.
No one really seemed to understand what had happened. What was this? How could this 911 call have gone out for a 20-year-old unconscious female and turned into 4 slaughtered college students, dispersed across 2 floors of a home, engaged in 2 different bedrooms, in pairs? How did this happen? Who did it? Who did this?
And then one day, out of desperation, law enforcement comes pleading to the public, and they're like, we are looking for a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, as well as its occupant or occupants. So seemingly without anyone knowing it, on that K-bar knife sheath, there was DNA. And it wasn't blood or sweat or spit, but skin cells, and quite a bit. So the Idaho State Lab takes this K-bar knife sheath, and they find that DNA, and they know it's single source, and it belongs to a male. But this person's not in CODIS. They've never been in trouble before. What? So now they're more interested than ever. And they contract with this company out of Texas called Othram. Othram runs genealogy on it, right? They build out a family tree. They come up with 4 brothers. They call one. He's like, fuck you. I have 0 interest in helping you. They turn over to the police and they're like, hey, look, we found 4 brothers, but they have 0 interest in helping us. Don't know what you're going to do, because we can't go any further. This person is not themselves in a database that we search. So, nothing. And the FBI is like, well, let us see what we can do. So on December 19th, the FBI gets this IGG hit, this investigative genetic genealogy hit. And they've got a name. And the next thing we all know, 11 days later, we've got a name.
Thank you for coming today. Last night, in conjunction with the Pennsylvania State Police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, detectives arrested 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, on a warrant for murders of Ethan, Xana, Madison, and Kaylee. I want to personally thank these agencies for their assistance in this case. Kohberger resides in Pullman, Washington, and is a graduate student at Washington State University. We will provide as much information as we can about the extradition to Idaho and the criminal process. However, due to Idaho state law, we are limited in what information we can release today until Kohberger has his initial appearance in Idaho court. To recap this case, on the evening of November 12th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at about 1:56 a.m. after visiting a local bar and street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were at the Sigma Chi house before arriving home around 1:45 a.m. The 2 surviving roommates had also been in the community but returned around 1 a.m. On the morning of November 13th, a 911 call was made at 11:58 a.m. reporting an unconscious person at the residence. The call came from inside the home from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones. Moscow police responded and found 2 victims on the 2nd floor and 2 victims on the 3rd floor. On November 17th, autopsies were conducted and the Latah County coroner confirmed the identity of the 4 victims. The cause and manner of death was homicide by stabbing. Some had defensive wounds, and each had been stabbed multiple times. These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students. However, we do believe justice will be found through the criminal process. This was a very complex and extensive case. We developed a clear picture over time, and we stand assured that the work is not done, but be assured the work is not done. This has just started.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Bill Thompson. I'm the Latah County prosecutor. And it's sad to be here, but happy to be here at the same time. As Chief Fry indicated, a criminal complaint was filed yesterday here in Latah County, charging the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, with 4 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to felony burglary, which involves entering the residence with the intent to commit the crime of murder. Mr. Kohberger, and let me preface, there's a pending case now in court, and I and my office and the investigators have to live with the restrictions that our Supreme Court places on pretrial publicity. That said, I promise you we will share with you through the court process or otherwise whatever we are allowed to. I just appreciate your patience on that. The factual basis for the charges are summarized in what's called a probable cause affidavit that is on file with the court. According to the rules of the Idaho Supreme Court, that is sealed until Mr. Kohberger is physically back in Latah County and has been served with the Idaho arrest warrant. At that time, we expect that that affidavit will be available to you so you can share the true facts with all of your readers and your watchers and your listeners and all of the people who are interested and really need to know what's going on. So please have patience with us on that. We hope to get that to you as soon as we can. As far as Mr. Kohberger, I can share with you that he is a graduate student at Washington State University and has an apartment residence over in Pullman. He has had an initial appearance in front of a judge in Pennsylvania. He is being held without bond, and the warrant from our magistrate judge here also provides for no bond. We understand that he's scheduled to be back in court in Pennsylvania next Tuesday afternoon, and that a public defender has been appointed for him there. The process at this point is, since he was arrested in another state, he has the opportunity to either waive extradition and return voluntarily to the state of Idaho, or if he prefers not to waive extradition, then we will initiate extradition proceedings through our governor's office. If we do that, it can take a while for him to get here. So again, I'm asking for your patience and understand that's just the way the system works. Once he gets here, he'll have an initial appearance with our magistrate. They'll deal with issues such as making sure competent counsel is representing him, and the case will be scheduled for further hearings. Your primary source of factual information is going to be the court record, because that's what the Supreme Court says we need to refer you to. So please pay attention to what's going on in court and have people there to watch and hear what's being said. As an attorney, myself and my office, we are limited on what we are allowed by the courts to say outside of the courtroom. So please just work with us. Finally, as the chief indicated, this is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning. Y'all now know the name of the person who has been charged with these offenses. Please get that information out there. Please ask the public, anyone who knows about this individual, to come forward. Call the tip line. Report anything you know about him to help the investigators and eventually our office and the court system understand fully everything there is to know about not only the individual, but what happened and why.
The day of the arrest, the police came out and they told us all the name of the person who had been accused of slaughtering the 4 Idaho 4 students. Bryan Christopher Kohberger of Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, had been arrested for slaughtering MadisonMogen, KayleeGoncalves, XanaKernodle, and EthanChapin, while Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk slept in the 1122 King Road home. What they didn't tell you was that Bryan had already started making moves. He had already been assigned counsel. Chief Public Defender of Kootenai County, Ann Taylor. And on December 30th of 2022, just as Bryan Kohberger was being arrested, by and through his attorney of counsel, Ann Taylor, he requested a non-dissemination order. The defense and Bryan would state that this was a very high-profile case and that they didn't need any information about Bryan or the case leaking out to the public. Ann Taylor, she had a story, and it was pretty good. And I think that's why they wouldn't let her speak. They were afraid of her story.
All right, anything else you can think of that I should know?
All that I really know was me saying that there was like a lot of boom, but I didn't hear it.
Okay.
And I don't really know how I didn't because I was on that floor.
Because you were just right below it, right?
One was below me, and Dana and me were on the same floor.
After he left, what happened?
I called me, and it was like I heard a sound like a firework, and I didn't like put 2 and 2 together. And he was holding, it looked like it was this, and this was black, and I didn't think that it was a gun, but now I'm thinking that it probably was, but I was just in and out of it because I was so tired.
You say this.
Like it was cylinder like this, and then it went straight out and then in. So I don't, maybe.
Almost like a arrow, or?
Yeah, kind of, but
Okay.
it was weird. I couldn't really, I called it like a mini vacuum. I don't really know what it was.
Okay.
Looking back, Dylan realizes that provided what Bethany heard and that she saw the man carrying something, she thinks it was a gun. And it makes sense to her. It may have been a gun. She didn't realize at the time, but now it makes sense. All this is real. And they were stabbed to death, but was that man carrying a gun? Bethany. Man. They negated everything that she told them. It just didn't matter to them. It just didn't matter to their investigation. That's unfortunate. Because after 7 bleak weeks, an arrest would be made. And to the arrestee's attorney, what Bethany said would matter an awful lot. It's the original domino that started building the craziest story that they would never let her tell. That story was terrifying to them because they hadn't even investigated it. They hadn't taken a look.